Starting with the Mideast crisis, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu urged the European Union on Monday to back a new U.S. peace initiative in the Middle East after President Donald Trump's unilateral decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital met with widespread condemnation. Netanyahu, on a first official visit to the EU by an Israeli premier in 22 years, told reporters in Brussels that recognizing Jerusalem was merely stating the reality on the ground. He said he expected many European countries to follow Trump's lead in the future. On the other hand, European officials said they have heard no details about the U.S. plan to relaunch moribund Mid-East peace efforts. Onto the Syrian profile. Declaring a victory in Syria, Russian President Vladimir Putin on Monday visited a Russian military air base in the country and announced a partial pull-out of Russian forces from the Mid-East nation. In a televised speech to the Russian troops at the Hmeimim air base, the Russian leader hailed their valor. In a speech to the troops, Putin also said that he had ordered the military to withdraw a significant part of the Russian contingent in Syria. From another aspect, the Syrian TV said that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad thanked Putin for his troops' effective contribution to the fight against terrorism in Syria. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin, making his second visit to Egypt, held talks on Monday with his Egyptian counterpart on their country's rapidly expanding ties. President al-Sisi met President Putin at Cairo's international airport, and the two leaders later went straight to the presidential Ittihadiyya Palace in Cairo's upscale Heliopolis suburb, where talks got underway. President Putin flew to Cairo after a brief and previously unannounced visit to a Russian military air base in Syria that has waged in support of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad against armed groups opposed to his rule. On the other side of the world, a pipe bomb strapped to a man went off in the New York City subway near Times Square on Monday, injuring the suspect and another person at the height of the morning rush hour. Officials said the man and the other person were being treated for non-life-threatening injuries. Police also said the explosion happened in an underground passageway under 42nd Street between 7th and 8th Avenues. The 7:30 a.m. blast filled the passageway, crowded with throngs of Monday morning commuters with the smoke. In addition, everything around the Port Authority area was shut down. On to Britain's EU exit. Prime Minister Theresa May is stressing her optimism about negotiations over Britain's departure from the European Union, insisting that a preliminary deal has given fresh impetus to the talks. May met with her cabinet on Monday morning before a scheduled address to the House of Commons, where she updated lawmakers on the agreement reached on Friday that covers questions about citizens' rights, Britain's financial obligations, and the Irish border. From another aspect, leaders of the other 27 EU members are expected to ratify the agreement later this week, allowing Brexit talks to move on to trade and security cooperation. On to natural crises. As Southern California enters its second week engulfed in flames, fire officials anticipate more growth and danger due to continued strong wind gusts, no rain, and decades-old dry vegetation. A powerful flare-up on the western edge of the largest and most destructive wildfire sent residents fleeing on Sunday, as wind-fanned flames ripped down hillsides toward coastal towns northwest of Los Angeles. New evacuations were ordered as the fire sent up an enormous plume near Montecito and Carpinteria seaside areas in Santa Barbara County. The National Weather Service also expects gusts of up to 40 miles per hour through Monday. And moving on to our economic news, the stock markets are mostly higher on Monday as signs of progress in the Brexit talks continue to support investor sentiment. Britain's climbed 0.6% to 7,435, as Britain and the European Union said last week they had achieved enough progress in the Brexit talks to start discussing the key issue of trade. Germany's DAX was flat at 13,153, while the CAC 40 in France shed 0.1% to 5,392. The futures added 0.1% and S&P 500 futures were up almost 0.1%. Meanwhile, Japan's Nikkei 225 stock index climbed 0.6% to 22,983.73. And the Shanghai Composite Index added 0.9% to 318.87. And finally, weather news. Snow and wintry weather are still wreaking havoc on travelers in Britain, with flights cancelled, roads sheathed in ice and rail travel disrupted. With temperatures dropping overnight as low as -11.6 Celsius, hundreds of schools were closed on Monday. Europe's largest airport, Heathrow, warned on Monday that some flights would be cancelled as it cleared the backlog of flights delayed by Sunday's snowfall. From another perspective, National Rail said poor weather conditions are affecting travel across England and Wales. Trains on Chiltern Railways, cross-country, Great Western and Virgin trains will all also be affected.